Welcome to Alberta Municipal Votes 2025 here on Municipal Affairs. With October 20th fast approaching, the race for municipal office across Alberta is heating up. From every corner of the province, candidates for mayor, reeve, and yes, even councillor are stepping forward with ideas for stronger communities, smarter growth, and brighter futures. Today we are turning our attention to the city of Cold Lake, Alberta, where we are sitting down and chatting with Ryan Bailey, a current councillor who is seeking re-election as councillor for the city of Cold Lake. Ryan, thank you so much for sitting down with me and talking about yourself and talking about your re-election bid to become, well, I guess continue on in your position as councillor for the city of Cold Lake. Before we talk about the issues and talk about what your priorities are for the next term, I want to get to know the man behind the persona a little bit and ask you a simple question I've asked most people who's ever come on this show. Where does your sense of duty to serve your community come from, Ryan?
Well, thank you for having me on here today. The duty to serve community has been long ingrained in me. I've actually run for city council when I was 18 years old in the city of Medicine Hat. I was unsuccessful. I've been with student leadership through college and university. And I always felt, and my family's always instilled in me that, you should give back to your community wherever it is, whether it's coaching or helping out in food banks or things like that, or running for municipal politics, always giving yourself back to the community that's, given so much to you.
And why the political route? Because giving back can come in many different forms. You can give back through nonprofits, through volunteerism, through community groups. But you decided at 18 in Medicine Hat and last election in Cold Lake that you were going to give back politically. What was the political bug about?
So a lot of times when a person runs for political office, they see things that they would like to improve upon or make better. And in some cases, in a not-for-profit scenario, you're able to do that. Sometimes you want to do a little bit of both. And when you're on the front lines politically, you're making some, real key decisions that have real quick impacts on the citizens. And so it's something I've always wanted to do. And I continue to strive to, help my community in the most effective way possible for me.
And how does that work? How do you help your community at the council table, do you believe?
So I think a lot of times, I teach social studies, grade 6, and we're learning about democracy. And a lot of times, the people who are in the majority will have their voices heard. And a lot of times I want to have that voice of the minorities as well represented, because everybody is a citizen in Cold Lake. And it's easy to go with the majority's voice all the time, but you always have to have somebody who's going to look out for minority groups, that are, less represented, a little more voiceless, a voice for the voiceless in a lot of cases. And I think when you're at the council table, it's a little easier to bring up those scenarios for other people that aren't necessarily being represented full time.
Is it hard to do that though? Because, and I say this with respect to the, I'm not painting I'm painting a very broad stroke here when I ask this question, but as a councillor, you have to represent everyone, even minorities, majorities, people who agree with you, who disagree with you. How do you see your role as councillor in being able to represent everyone, but also keep that sort of background of saying, I need to represent the people who feel like they're a minority in the community?
Yeah, you've hit the nail on the head there. It's like I've told, it's crazy. This is what we're teaching right now in Social Studies 6. I've told the kids there'll be decisions made, municipally, federally, provincially, that you will never have 100% buy-in. And so a lot of times it becomes, making sure that you have, you're accountable for the decision you've made, and you say, these were the facts that I have. And I know that it may not be what you agree with, but I have to look at the broader sense of the world and say, okay, we got to make sure that, we're doing this, because if we always went with just whatever the majority suggests, a lot of times things may not happen, because, you look at things like, well, nobody wants to have their taxes go up, so we shouldn't be doing this one thing that's going to increase my taxes. And sometimes the right thing to do, it may rub a lot of people the wrong way, but in the end, when you're looking forward, you have to be a forward-looking person. You can't just concentrate on your term. You have to look back at terms when councillors laid groundwork. You try to improve in your term that you're in, but you have to have that forward-looking lens of what's going to happen, in 2070 when I'm probably riding off into the sunset. How can we improve things today? Things we have to get done today to help out in the future when some of us will be well gone.
Is that hard to do around the council table? Because, and again, I've chatted with a few people from Cold Lake already, and I'm going to be up there this weekend as of this recording. So the weekend before this airs on our YouTube channel and on other platforms. But I would imagine you probably know a lot of people in the community, and there's a lot of people in the community that will be in favor of what you do and how you want the community to move forward. But you have to sort of dissect what people want, because there's 100% of the people who will never agree 100% of the time on the issues that are in front of you, but you have to make the best decision. As a councillor for the past 4 years and someone who is looking to get reelected, do you feel like you have struck in a good balance of being able to dictate, or not dictate, sort of figure out what the community wants while realizing that you're going to have to upset some people?
Absolutely. I try to be as accountable to the citizens as I can. People can email me, call me, stop me in the grocery store. Cold Lake isn't that big of a place. And when you're a teacher / a baseball umpire, I was once, I'm a football referee. I announce at the Cold Lake ice games. People know.
You just like getting yelled at, that it sounds like. Referee and umpire, politician. Come on.
Yeah, it's a labor of love again, but it goes back to serving the community, right? Doing things. If we don't have umpires and referees, we don't have minor sports, and the kids don't get to play. And so you're right when you say that people know who I am. It's not a boastful thing. This is a small city of 17,000 plus. I am recognizable, and so I hope that people have and a lot of people they have no problem coming up to me and saying, this is what I really think you should be doing. And I take that under advisement. That's what we do. But in the end, as a councillor, I have a lot of access to a lot of data to see things and make a decision. And I always tell people, anytime you want to ask why I made that decision, barring it being an in-camera item, I can give you the information I used to come to that decision. And in the end, some people won't be happy. But again, 100% of people won't be happy, but 100% of people won't be upset the whole time. And so you have to strike that balance with everybody. You're going to, hit something like, we plowed the snow, we snow plowed the roads today, and we're picking up the garbage, and that costs money, and those kind of things. And so it's striking that balance of, you can come to me and say, hey, I didn't really appreciate this decision you made. Can you tell me more about why you made it? And I will be upfront and honest and say, this is why I made it. And at the end of the day, you still may walk away not happy with the decision I made, but I hope I've earned the respect of saying, well, this is why I made that decision.
Is it hard to be truthful in a community that size? And I say truthful as in like the worst thing that a politician can often say to an electorate, especially during an election, is no, we can't help you in that situation. Municipalities have a limited supply of money that they can play with. And I say play with as in spend and use towards operating and capital costs. And you can't solve everyone's issues. So how important is it to be upfront with people? And do you believe that people want politicians or local candidates, local councillors, to be upfront and not drag them along with that sense of hope that you're going to solve my problem tomorrow? But in reality, it's not going to be tomorrow. It's going to be about a year from now when we look at the next year's budget, because this year we can't solve it.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think that's vitally important for any person who's running for council. Just be upfront. Like I've always said to people, when somebody promises they're going to do something, like I promise we'll hold the line on taxes, the first thing you should ask them is, okay, so what's going to be sacrificed if fuel goes up, or what are you going to sacrifice then? Because it's nice and easy to say, I don't want any tax increases. Okay, so we go for a year or two or three, but what's the ramification down the road? when infrastructure is crumbling because you wanted to stay elected at a 0% tax increase and your sewer is collapsing, you don't have the proper wastewater treatment plants and those kind of things. So it's vitally important. And it may or may not get a person elected to say, you know what, in all cases, I would love for taxes to hold the line, but we have some things we have to do. And at the budget deliberation, which is open to the public, they can come and watch us deliberate. Come on down, give us some ideas. Like, you know, people will want to say, well, why don't we get rid of this? Why don't we get rid of that? And again, it comes down to, you know, here's a little more information on why we don't get rid of that or why we spend it. And so it's important that you just be upfront with people and say, you know what, I'm going to take that concern. And whether I agree with the concern or not, that's not my thing. Anybody that emails me with a concern, I always bring it to council and I say, this is what somebody's come up with. I think recently I've had someone who asked about a new, just a painted crosswalk to go in a little busy intersection by one of the schools. And so I will bring that forward. And I always tell the person, I'll get the information for you and I will get back to you. And like you said, it could come down to, you know what, I'd love to get it done this year, but you know, we might have to wait till the next budget deliberation. And anybody who's watched our meetings sees there are times where we move things to the next budget deliberation. Like, we're not going to make that decision today. We're going to go, you know, in the next budget because it's just too much to do on this one day.
I want to turn to sort of what you're hearing, because over the last 4 years, you've had to make some very tough decisions and you're asking people to put their trust in you for another 4 years. As you're out door knocking, as you're out asking people for their vote, what are you hearing about the big issues that they believe Cold Lake is facing right now?
Yeah, so over the 4 years, sometimes the focus will change from people. There's always a crime and safety issue that's going on. And when we talk about crime and safety in Cold Lake, you know, sometimes the numbers are a little different than perception. And I'm not saying that people, you know, what they feel isn't true, but I think over this 4 years, we've really worked hard to try and lessen the crime in our community. We've hired additional RCMP officers. We have a private security company that's going around town, just sort of, you know, trying to move people along so that we aren't having people just sort of congregate in the darkness of night, those kind of things. Looking at the latest, you know, statistics from the RCMP, a lot of our crime has gone down, and in a lot of cases down in double-digit percentages. That doesn't mean we are where we need to be. We need to continue doing that. And so crime, you know, it goes hand in hand. We get a lot of crime, but a lot of those people are, you know, out on the street on their own, unhoused, or living, you know, harsh outside, have addiction issues. And what we've tried to do as a council, and I've been proud to be part of that, is to advocate to our province, hey, we can't do this alone. And if anybody's watched any of our times when MLA Sierra's come on, we ask him the tough questions. We need addiction center help up here in the Northeast. And if everybody's coming to Cold Lake because it's the biggest hub in the Northeast, then we need to have the province, the feds, and the municipality working together to get these services to help people so that we can lower our crime rate, get people out of addiction, and help make the city a safer place to be.
It's a multifaceted approach, though. It's a multifaceted issue as well, because it's not just crime. It's not just the repeat offenders, and bail reform comes to play with that. There's the mental health and addictions. There's the support services that the community has, and hiring RCMP officers is great. And it's a good first step, but there's many other approaches that you need to take. What would you want to see the next 4 years look like when it comes to crime and safety and the challenges that Cold Lake is going through? Because whenever I speak to a municipal politician or someone who's running for office, is what can we do in the past without really looking about what we should be doing in the future? So what do you see as the steps that we need to take in the future to ensure that this doesn't just stop with having a conversation with your local MLA or local MP?
Right. So I think we need to continue, though, doing that and putting the ball in their court and saying, look, your jurisdiction is mental health and addictions. And so we've got to keep pressing them. And it can't, and a lot of times it's like being a parent. Your kids can hear you say it all the time, or a kid complaining to their parents. It wears off. But if everybody else sort of jumps on and also says, you know what, we really need this. Now, in Cold Lake, we have our MCC, our municipally controlled corporation, which is the CL Medical Clinic. And that CL Medical Clinic, that was because, you know, in my mind, the province is sort of downloading and getting rid of their responsibilities. And as a city, you could be like, well, I guess we don't have doctors. But what city does that? Like what person could sit around a council table and say, well, I guess we don't get doctors. And so the forward thinking or the out of the box thinking that we did in this term was we bought a medical clinic. And that medical clinic had 2 doctors to start with. It's now up to 7 and possibly an 8th. We're expanding it. We're trying to get an MRI. We're trying to get all those things. And so if somebody in our new expansion of the clinic is like, hey, I'm an addictions worker and I would love to work out of there, by all means, we'll get you in there. So as a city, we want to try and get out of the way a little bit of, you know, red tape and stuff. So we're going to open the spaces. You come to us and say, you know what, I'm an addictions counselor, or I'm going to run a night walk-in clinic. And that would be really awesome. And so we want to try and make it easy for people to make those choices, to do those things. But ultimately, when you're talking health, that is a provincial responsibility, and we will continue, at least I will for sure, continue to ask the hard questions of why, if we have so many people needing mental health and addiction in the Northeast, are we not building the facilities? And that's an important thing to, you know, to put against your MLA, right? So, and I'm more than willing to do that. If anybody's watched us, like I said, have Mr. Sear in-house at council, we've asked the hard questions, and to his credit, he's answered them and said he's taking our concerns. And we've written a lot of letters. We will continue to write a lot of letters. We will continue to blow the horn and say, you need to do something. You know what? It's time, because we can't just arrest people, because that's just putting a Band-Aid on this. We got to help the people that need help. And then hopefully, you know, with our John Howard Society, Cookham's House, those are our 2 social aspects here in Cold Lake that are working hard with people and trying to help them out. Our John Howard Society, we get statistics from them. They are, you know, they're getting their people their licenses, they're getting them, you know, ID cards, and they're getting them, you know, to, you know, on their way to becoming, you know, what most people would say, you know, productive citizens. And a lot of times it was just, well, nobody wanted to help me get this information. Thank you for helping me. And so we continue to do that. And the John Howard homeless shelter, that's one small step. And that was in the previous council as well. They had the foresight to say, you know what, this is an issue. We need to get people so they're not sleeping on the streets in the cold weather, and we're going to keep helping. And this council has gone along with it as well.
But there's often this area that we often don't talk about is it's great that council's working with the MLA, with the local MP, with stakeholders. But do you believe that the residents want to see something done about this issue? And I know the answer is going to be yes, but I want to just sort of tweak it a little bit by saying, when you're spending money outside your jurisdictional role that you're often supposed to be spending on provincial issues, is mental health and addictions, there's often a sense of, oh, that means that our infrastructure is going to collapse. That means we're not spending money on our parks, our pool, X, Y, or Z. So in your opinion, do you believe that the community is behind the municipality's actions of getting this stuff sorted out and at a provincial on the provincial radar, whether it be with your MLA or with a cabinet minister?
I think for the most part, if you ask people, and I can't speak for everybody, I would imagine that everybody wants something done. And I think it comes down to those who should be doing what they're supposed to do are doing it. And so right now, as city councilors, we're picking up the ball, but we shouldn't have to be. And so I think that people want something done. However, they don't necessarily want their municipal government dealing with it, because it is a huge cost. If we were to build, say, a new huge addiction center, that's millions of dollars that, you know, really shouldn't be put on the backs of Cold Lake taxpayers. You know, there would have to be a regional discussion on that. But realistically, with the amount of money that we send to Edmonton from this northeastern area from oil and gas, I've said to somebody before, we shouldn't have to keep going hat in hand and begging for some money to help us. And you know, they will hopefully listen to us and give us money. And to be fair, again, Mr. Sear has worked hard. He's gotten us some cash. But again, a municipality shouldn't have to go begging for the money that their taxpayers have sent out, that their industries have sent out. You know, it should be given out to those communities that have put in. And I'm sure at some point we're going to talk about the dreaded cheese grater, Highway 28. We're going to talk about those kind of things, and everybody having, PILT and those kind of things, where you have a responsibility. Step up and do it, because if you're not, I'm hearing it. If you're not fixing the highway, if you're not paying your fair share taxes, I get it, and I can't speak for the feds or the province. And so, short answer or a long answer to your question is, I think people want to see something done. They would just like to see the appropriate agencies putting up the money for it to do it.
You opened up the Pandora's box, so let's play in Pandora's box for a few minutes and let's talk about that dreaded Highway 28. Now, I've lived in Alberta for coming on 12 years now. I first moved in Lloydminster and I heard about Highway 28. I moved up to Slave Lake, I heard about Highway 28. I started the show, I've heard about Highway 28 more than I've heard about many other issues when it comes to major highway improvements. There may be some who say, okay, we still haven't gotten it done. Report after report, provincial minister after provincial minister saying we're going to get something on the books, but it's not gotten done. At what point in time does the city of Cold Lake and the council around the table have to just finally say, okay, enough is enough. If you're not going to do it, we need to have a serious conversation about what the safety of our residents are going to be who drive Highway 28 on a regular basis?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And so, you're right. This Highway 28 is, before my time, even probably in existence, living in Cold Lake. I've been here, over 20 years. And so I think we've had enough up here. And we had, again, like I said, we've had the MLA in-house and we've brought up 28 and we've said, it's all fine and dandy that you're putting, the number in the ledger and it's there, but we need to see shovels in the ground, engineering stakes. We need to see the things happening, because when you for anybody who's watching this, I know your network goes across provinces all across Canada. So you probably have a similar highway to the one I'm about to explain. It's falling apart. I called it in the media, it got quoted, I called it the cheese grater, because as you're driving on it, you're bumping along. And so they've done some patchwork and all that. But the danger of Highway 28 is it gets to, the Fort McMurray Highway turnoff, and you've got huge pieces of equipment coming down the highway. And, if you're incoming, you're oncoming traffic and you've seen that, you have to pull over. If it's dark, the curves are off, and it's a real dangerous highway. There's been changes over the decades, like out at the Redwater area, the turnoff. They make small changes, but realistically, it's still probably one of the more dangerous highways in Alberta, because there's so many people going up and down that highway, and you're traveling with huge pieces of machinery that are there, and it's just a recipe for disaster. Now, I know that the Premier traveled Highway 28 to come to the Bonnyville Cold Lake area, and so maybe it got a little bit more airplay with the Minister of Transportation and Economic Corridors. But we really need to actually see action. They say they're going to. So I think people are. There's been, as a teacher a few years ago on Highway 28, there was a teacher whose truck rolled over. He survived. He was okay, but it's just so darn dangerous and people are tired of that. So much so they will turn off at separate, range roads to avoid, driving down the bad conditions of the highway. And so we say, you've got to fix that. And we tell our ministers and we tell them. And so at some point, people need to get really angry and write, as opposed to just us writing. But as long as people sort of allow them to, we're just going to put the $5 million engineering drawings here, and that's it. We as a council, including our Mayor Copeland, have said enough is enough. We're tired of seeing, words being just said, like we'll do it. You got to show us now. And that's one thing we will continue to push. And if I'm reelected, I will continue to push until we have the proper passing lanes. It would really be nice with so much heavy equipment if it was just twinned. It's at some point, bite the bullet, twin the highway, and do it. Because the longer you wait, the more expensive it's going to get, which I'm sure we're going to talk about more things, right, that have come down. So yeah, go ahead. Keep asking me questions. I'm loving it.
So I want to talk about affordability because seems to be the topic of a lot of conversations I'm having, not just in Cold Lake, but across Alberta right now around this municipal election. Now, we can talk about downloading until we're blue in the teeth, and we can talk about the challenges that municipalities have with trying to fix issues that are not in their jurisdiction. But I want to start with a simple question. As someone who's been there for the last 4 years, when people pay their property taxes, they want to feel like they're paying their property taxes and getting something back in return. That tangible item, that thing that they can go out and say, okay, the money I've paid into the city has come back in X factor. Before we talk about the affordability and how we deal with the micro issues compared to macro, simple question. Do you think the city of Cold Lake spends property taxes that are collected for the municipality only and not
Right.
sent to the province via the education portion of the property taxes? Or do you believe that the property taxes are spent wisely?
Yeah, for those that are watching, my property tax bill this time, 25% of it was education tax, and that was the biggest increase for me. So if we take that out, in a lot of cases, the taxes, the municipal portion of taxes, has basically stayed, fairly close to everything for me. Like my tax bill all the time has not gone crazy. This year it went a little bit higher again with that huge education portion, which we're going to have again next year, another increase. I think a lot of times when we do things as a municipality, we always look at service levels and the service level that Cold Lakers expect versus what we deliver. And I think in a lot of cases, when we deliver, we're delivering the services that people expect. They expect weekly garbage pickup. They expect bi-weekly, the alternating cardboard pickup and the organics. And so people expect those things. And so if one day a whole group says, you know what, we really should just go to garbage pickup once a month, crazy, but let's do it. Then you would see probably your taxes go down because the service level is lower. But I'll tell you, the minute the snow hits the highway and the plows aren't out, we're hearing it, and that costs. And so we always try and do things in the most prudent and fiscally responsible way there is. A couple years ago, is no different anywhere in Alberta. We had a huge amount of snow. And so, sometimes the snow budget's a little higher than what we had expected. And so, it's those things or just gas bill for, fueling the fleet. Everything just goes up and up and up. And so we try to maintain the services, and I will continue to maintain the services as best we can. But, the understanding has to be it does cost money. If we want, again, and we said this earlier in the interview, if you want taxes to go down or stay at zero, what's the trade-off? What are you going to sacrifice? Is it just garbage collection once every 2 weeks instead of every week? Are we just pushing snow to the side? Because in Cold Lake, we truck the snow away. And so there's a lot of things. Yeah.
Shocker. I'm shocked that municipalities still do that. Just putting that out there right now.
Yeah, so in some places they just push it to the side. You dig yourself out. Still in Cold Lake, we put a windrow in the middle. The big giant plow comes and crunches all the snow up and puts it up. That we can find places to save those monies if people think that that's something that's not economically feasible anymore. And yes, the taxes might go down, but there's some things that we just can't seem to shake, right? Like we we're over 17,000 people now. We hit that magic 15,000 mark for RCMP policing, which moved us from 70% police cost to 90%. That's something we cannot say no to. And so when you're moving, hundreds of thousands of dollars just in that policing budget, that was already a 2 to 3% increase that, the municipal government didn't pick. And then of course you have things like wages, back wages, and we pay for body cams, and it's all well worth it. I'm not saying that we shouldn't be paying for policing. We definitely should, and it's all well worth it. But it's those small things where people, when you finally tell them that, they're like, oh, I guess I didn't realize that the fact that since we moved to 90% cost, that's hundreds of thousands of dollars. That's a couple percent increase right away right there. And that's going forward because we're over 15,000.
But how do you sell that general public, because as a municipal elected leader, you're there to make the tough decisions and say, okay, yes or no. We have to make the tough choices on where that $100,000 is going to come forward to pay for the RCMP. Because, like you said, you have no control over what the federal government says you have to pay. And then you have to go out and sell that. And that means you're going to have to upset some people by saying, we have to cut some services or we have to cut some areas unless you want to see a 10% tax increase on top of the 25% that the province has dictated. Again, outside of our control that we have to ask you to collect. How do you sell that to people to make them understand that you're not just collecting money just to go spend it on willy-nilly stuff, but you're doing it on tangible things? Because traditionally, and this is just Chris Brown, the host of the Municipal Affairs podcast, who literally lives and breathes municipal life, traditionally municipalities spend stuff on infrastructure projects, capital projects that aren't that sexy. The lift water treatment facility, the wastewater treatment facility, the lift stations, the things that you need in a community but cost a lot more than they used to for 10 years ago to do. So how important is it for you to sell that vision of what you're spending money on to ensure people know that you're not just out drinking champagne at council meetings every week and having a fun time?
Yeah, and I think it really hits on what you said earlier in the interview, and that's just be honest. Giving people the facts. Here's the facts. We have our budgets are public documents. You can see what we're spending money on every council meeting. In fact, I'm going to one tonight. We have a council. They're on YouTube. People can see how we vote, what we're discussing, and it's just all that transparency really helps. And it's like you said, and we're in that right now. I'm the chairman of the RUSC, the Regional Utilities, and we're building a brand new wastewater treatment plant that's going to cost us, 34 million. Now the RUSC is the MD, us, Cold Lake First Nations, Four Wings. So it's a group. But you have to just say to people, look, the importance of having your wastewater safely removed from your area is vital. And it's like you said, a lot of municipal politics spending is not the sexy stuff. It's not the ice rinks and the swimming pools. It's the things so that we can live safely and, have our water clean, our wastewater taken away, those kind of things. And so it just comes down to, again, being honest with the taxpayer and saying, this is what we have to do. Because if we continue to hold the line on taxes and zero, we don't want to run into a situation where our wastewater treatment plant collapses and now we've got a problem. And that's happened before kind of in Cold Lake. There was a time when I moved here and there was a time where we had a 30% tax increase in 1 year. And if you look back at the data, there was a lot of zeros and negative 0.1s and zero. And so what happens is, nothing's getting built or nothing's getting fixed, nothing's getting maintained, because while you're holding taxes, costs are going up. And so by the time you finally jump in to say, oh, we need to build a new public works building, we need to build a new wastewater treatment plant, we need to fix Lakeshore Drive. We should have done it, 15 years ago, maybe when the price was different, but now we've got to do it and it's going to cost a little bit more. And I just always tell people, you know what, you can ask me for the information and I can, as long as I'm able to give it to you and it doesn't, violate some sort of, FOIP or things like that, we can tell people, this is why like the wastewater treatment plant, it's 34 million. The public works plant is going to cost X amount. And you know what? You're right. Maybe 15, 20 years ago, it would have been half that, but we're not there anymore. And we have to build these bigger things to look to the future. Again, with the wastewater treatment plant, we're building not for today's population, but for 10, 15, 20, 30, 100 years down the road, hopefully, making sure everything's okay there.
But that's the biggest challenge I think a lot of municipalities are going to be faced with over the next 4 years is planning for the future, but not forgetting the current people who are there. Because while it's great to increase service levels, increase wastewater treatment facilities, increase X, Y, and Z, people want to feel like they're being served today. So in your time in council and over the next 4 years, how do you see yourself being able to balance? And I'm going to quote Wrath of Khan, Star Trek. I apologize for anyone who hears this on a regular basis on the show. How do you balance the needs of the many with the needs of the few? Because there are people who say, yes, we need to look for what Cold Lake is going to be in 2030. But there's going to be a lot of people who say, I don't care about 2030. I care about right now. And right now, my taxes are high. And right now, the
Mhm.
service levels are not what I need them to be because I'm a single mother and I need to bring my two children to the library, to the pool, to have them in those programs that the city offers at a reduced cost that traditionally they aren't able to afford. So, how do you balance that? And how do you see yourself being able to balance that? Because future thinking is great, but here and now is even better for some people.
Right. And so some of the things, like in order to alleviate some costs for people, we have free public transit. And you know what, that becomes a bit of a political football for a lot of people, because the debate becomes, do you charge? Do you not charge? And so what we have decided prior to even my time in council is busing would be free. And a lot of good things come with free busing, and that is the grants to help pay. So we've had, I'm just trying to think, we've had the Canadian Public Transit Fund. We just got it with from the feds. We're getting $1 million over 10 years to help pay for that. We've got provincial money coming for that, and so people will often say, well, when you give free transit to people, that's when issues happen. But we have to also look at the fact of, single mom, single dad, teenage kid has to get to his job, doesn't have a car. The transit is important, and so it's those things, and I get it. People want to see a return on that, but when you start charging for the bus, now you have to start, administratively, what's the cost going to be to have somebody, punch out passes, or collect and roll the coin, those kind of things. Is it going to be a net loss on that? Because not every dollar on transit is spent by Cold Lake taxpayers. We do get a lot of grants, and the reason we do get a lot of grants is because we've said we're going to go with free transit, and so we get the Alberta relief shortfalls for transit operators from those kind of things, and so that's the one thing. So to try and look at today, there are things that we're trying to do today to help people. We have incentive programs for seniors, to help on their property taxes, things like that. We've tried to do incentive programs to get people to build more affordable housing. As a council, we've put a lot of incentive programs in for business to build businesses, housing, startups, those kind of things. But with the goal of, try and keep it affordable for people. And that's one thing. I'm not, I don't have all the answers yet, but I definitely want to keep looking at today, for sure. And I always take criticism, critiques, emails saying, can we look at this? Because I don't see everything, right? And so I need people to say, have you tried looking at this? Have you tried looking at a bigger incentive for multifamily or something like that, so that we can build more things? And that's really what it is. And I totally understand. People often sometimes think that, when we vote up taxes in the city, that for some reason mine doesn't go up, but everybody's paying. And I understand that the pain is there. And so, I hate to sort of, sidestep the question a little bit, but our taxes probably could be a lot lower if, federal and provincial governments were paying their fair share.
Well, speaking of federal government paying their fair share, let's talk about Pilot for a few seconds, if you don't mind, because this was a major win for the city of Cold Lake in the last 4 years. And I know it's relatively, I say last 4 years, and it's relatively new. I think it was like June or July when the official announcement came out that this was happening. What does that mean for the city of Cold Lake, and what does that mean for your community and your council to have that win under the belt, to say, okay, the federal government is going to pay their fair share of payments to the municipality for the services that we offer, CFB Cold Lake, because they're still using your water as much as your residents are.
Yeah, and so to be clear, this last 4 years, we've gotten to see a lot of movement, but this has been a file since the early 2010s, so around 2012. So every council that's been before us, they have faced this, and it wasn't just one prime minister or one political party. It was both. If we look at the both governing parties, and so it's always been that that payment in lieu of taxes. So we don't tax the people on the base. The government's supposed to pay us, and it's been a long time struggle where it just seems that the procurement people out there have, we thought, undervalued what we have out there. And so we kept pushing and pushing. And to be fair, having lawyers is not cheap. And so, you know, you look at that, and if in the end, because I'm not sure if the feds are going to appeal or not, if in the end they finally pay up what they're supposed to pay, that could really help our city for sure. Now, does that mean we're going to be sending, you know, Cold Lake bucks? I don't think that would be something where everybody gets it, but you would now be able to lessen the burden on certain things for people. And so that's one thing. You know, a lot of people might see some changes on their bills anyway, because, you know, I don't know if you've talked about this before, but the new Alberta recycling thing, where the costs are actually on the operators, not necessarily the city. And so we're looking at lowering those bills as well. Small things, right? Like it's those little things. And I think if people see, you know what, you guys really put in the effort to, you know, change the light bulbs in the street lights, and that's costing us a little less. So my taxes, you know, maybe I'm paying a little less for the city electricity and those kind of things. But it's important that those feds pay their fair share, and we're going to continue to hold them. And I know whether I'm on the next council or not on the next council, I know that they'll be following that extremely closely to get it to come to an end of, you know, this is now getting close to, you know, 15 years on it. And the money's adding up. And so we're hoping that the feds will just say, yeah, you know what, we need to do that. But the ramifications, this case is being looked at by a lot of places across Canada, and the ramifications on it are huge. And so, you know, we'll see what happens here in the final few months of whatever they're going to do.
I apologize if this question comes out of left field, but I want to kind of be a little bit of optimistic in the challenges and the issues that Cold Lake faces. But I'm getting the sense, after chatting with a few council candidates and a few mayoral candidates in the city of Cold Lake, and this is the only first time I've asked this question to someone, so I apologize it falls on your shoulders to answer it, but I'm getting a sense that Cold Lake has gone through a bit of a uphill mountain when it comes to some challenges. Highway 28 being one that's been on the books for some time. Pilot being an issue that's been on the books for some time. And Cold Lake still seems to be chugging along, trying to make the best of everything that they're handed. Over the last 4 years, do you get an optimistic hope that the city of Cold Lake can weather these long-term storms that have been coming its way?
Absolutely. I think we have a very resilient population here. And I think the fact that, you know, we all see what an amazing city this is, whether it's down to the beach, New Lake Shore, Cold Lake South, everything is looking great here. And while there is some storm clouds and we're trying to weather things no different than any other, I think a lot of people see that, you know, the good in Cold Lake. And I think that, you know, if we just keep chugging along, it's like you said, we're just, you know, we're a head down, chug along. You know what, we're gonna make it work, but we're also gonna hold the people accountable to help us make it work. We're not gonna just do it on our own. I think that really says something about us. We are sort of end of the highway, right? Like if you know, people are always like, the gas in Cold Lake is more expensive than the gas in the other towns. Well, we're the end of the highway. And so we often feel, even though you would have people in the southeast portion of the province saying they're the forgotten corner, we're thinking that the northeast has been a lot of a forgotten corner, you know, if you're south of Fort Mac. And so we're going to keep, you know, shouting from the rooftops, shouting from the hilltops, saying, you know, look at us, we need some work here. You need to put in the effort here that you put in big cities, Edmonton, Calgary, Red Deer, Medicine Hat, Lethbridge, you know, and it shouldn't matter, you know, who our MLA is, you know, we should be able to have the money here too. Maybe we don't have a minister yet, but we still vote. And up here, you know, people have, you know, consistently voted certain ways the whole time, and they're not seeing the payback. So I think, you know, it's a good idea for people to, you know, vote how you're going to vote in other elections, but then say, you know what, I voted for you and I expect you to fix Highway 28. That's your job. I expect you to help out our Cold Lake Council with the, you know, health and addictions part. That's your job. And the more people, I don't want to say complain, because that's not what you're doing, but you advocate for your city and say, look, you know what, we put a lot of money up and down Highway 28, as bumpy as it is, sending it, you know, to Edmonton and stuff. We would just like to have some money back. And like I said at the start, to be fair, there's been times where, you know, the government has given us money for the wastewater treatment plant and our water treatment plant and those kind of things. But we still need to hold their nose to the grindstone, their feet to the fire, and say, you know what? If you want to make health and addictions an important thing and solving that issue, you've got to put the money in. You cannot rely on the 17,000 people in Cold Lake to fund a multi-million-dollar addiction center. And so, you know what? You want to put one in Edmonton or Calgary or wherever, but you should have one in the northeast corner, and Cold Lake is probably the best area to put it in. You know, you should have one in every corner and some in the middle. But a lot of times that Highway 2 corridor seems to be the golden road, and we're going to keep pushing for Cold Lake, because it would be irresponsible for me to not advocate on behalf of our city, no matter what.
So it sounds like there's going to be a lot of challenges that the next city council is going to have to address. How important do you believe is it to have continuity on council between this term and next term? Because you're going to have a big loss on your council, and that is Craig Copeland is not running for re-election. And that means there's going to be a new mayor, and that means the council will have to be ready on day one as the new mayor learns the ropes of their new position. And there's going to be some councillors that are going to have to sort of step up and know what's going on in the community. How important do you believe that it is to have your voice as that continuation from this term to next term?
I think it's vitally important. I think you have to balance, experience with fresh ideas. I think as long as you're an experienced counselor who's open to new ideas and open to listening to things, and taking a different lens, because like you said, Mayor Copeland, who has been mayor for 18 years, that's a huge gap to fill. And so we'll see who gets elected out of the current candidates there. But it's vital to have a team around them that sort of knows the ropes a little bit, knows some of the files. That doesn't mean, because if you look at it, there's our current counselor. A current counselor is running for mayor, so there's an opening there, and so there is position for new faces and new ideas, and always I'm always up for that. But I think it's also vital to have experience. And in the last 4 years, I've gained a lot of experience, because what I don't think a lot of people understand is being a counselor isn't just showing up Tuesday night in council office to have a council meeting. There's a lot of behind the scenes stuff. We're on a lot of committees. We have a lot of reading. Sometimes agendas and agenda packages are 900,000 pages. So you have to, devote that time. And so it's not just looking, as handsome as I look on YouTube. There's a lot of behind the scenes work, a lot of work that you have to do as a counselor. And I know whoever gets elected will probably be able to do that. But it's nice to have experience to say, 4 years ago, this is why we did this, and this is why we're going to move on. With PILT, we've had some counselors on council that were there, in 2012 or just after. And so you get their perspective. I think it's vitally important to have, the term used as incumbents or veterans or experienced counselors, as well as new perspectives. And I look forward to hopefully being reelected and working with whoever's on council. I find I get along with a lot of people in terms of seeing their side of the coin and making decisions.
So before I go to my last two questions, I should just mention this for anyone who's still listening and watching, and hopefully you are, because it's great to be informed as we head into this election period. But this is an editorial note. If you are running in this upcoming election in the city of Cold Lake and you want to be featured on this show, reach out to us directly via social media or head over to the Cross Border Network website. We have 343 other municipalities in the province of Alberta that we are paying attention to. So you need to do a little bit of work if you want to be featured on this show. Ryan reached out to us, and we appreciate him for doing that, because we want to get as many perspectives on this show between now and October 20th, when people head to the ballots to cast their votes. So if you want to be featured on this show, if you're running in Cold Lake, reach out to us. The links are in the show notes below. So with that being said, what is priority number one for a re-elected Councillor Bailey?
So if I'm re-elected, it's, you go in there, and again, there's 7 of you, so everybody's going to have their priorities. A couple things I really want to keep working on is the medical side. With the clinic, I want to make sure that we're able to get people, because in our last census that we did, we asked the question about doctors, and 40% of the population of Cold Lake didn't have a doctor, with 8% saying they had to, go out of town to get it. So we want to really make sure that that's there, and we want to hold the provincial government accountable for that. There's a lot of things. I get a lot of people asking. I'd love to see us look into, eventually some sort of cultural arts and museum with a theater type thing, those kind of things. I want to make sure that things, though, are still affordable. So, there's been things that have come up, pools and other things. And if they're just not affordable and they're not urgent, like you can't put off a wastewater treatment plant for very long, especially if you're told you need to build a new one. But we have a pool in town. So the fact of a new one coming might not happen right away, because you don't want to overburden everybody. Like, there'll be people who are like, I want a pool, and there'll be people who I don't want a pool. And so there's those priorities. But I really want to just continue making Cold Lake the best best it can be. I want to make sure that we're taking care of everybody. I was just recently at the Stepping Stones opening. That's our women's shelter here. It's a huge, beautiful building, 50,000 square feet. I want to always make sure that Cold Lake has a place for everyone. I want to make sure that everybody is represented. I want to make sure that the services Cold Lakers expect are there. And I want to make sure that if there's a way to save money and still keep the service levels up, that we continue to look in that. And that's when we go through budget line by line at budget deliberations and say, you know what, we're going with this new thing here. It's going to cost us, maybe it's a new truck that's, hyper efficient, and so we'll save money there. It's all those things. And I'm never against looking at ways to save the burden on the taxpayer and continue to give them the services they want and deserve.
My final question for you, Ryan, before I let you go, because as you said, you're heading off to a council meeting as we're recording this, but I'm going to turn the microphone over to you for as long or as little as you want to take it. And it's the $1 million question. Why should people put their trust in you on October 20th and re-elect you as their councillor for the city of Cold Lake?
Well, that's a great question. So I'd like to first thank everybody for supporting me through the first 4 years of my term. I want to thank you for having me on here today. I think one thing that I would like to make people aware of and why they should reelect me is I want to make sure everybody in the city has a better existence. I'm not looking at any one thing. It's not just the kids or just seniors or just business. I want to make sure that everybody in Cold Lake has the opportunity to be successful and have, the best life possible in Cold Lake, because it's a beautiful city and we've got a lot to be proud of. I think what people have seen over the 4 years is I'm able to make tough decisions, sometimes controversial decisions, always looking out for, the majority, but respecting and representing the rights of the minority, because we live in a democracy and minority rights are just as important. That doesn't mean anybody's rights are more important, but we have to make sure that we're representing everybody. And so we've done some things like that. I want people to know that, I'm a caring, compassionate person who's committed to Cold Lake, meaning, when we're talking about feeding those that are a little bit less fortunate with food bank and things like that, and helping out, and a nice bed to sleep on so they can sleep and live. We got to do that, but we also have to temper it with making the hard decisions of making sure that safety is still there. Like I've always told people, being homeless isn't a crime, but if you're committing crimes, you should be held accountable. And so we're going to look at those kind of things. I think we have to continue to incentivize our businesses to do things. We've got a population boom coming with the base, and so we've incentivized housing builds and those kind of things. And I think that people see that as part of this council, I personally, with the council, vote to try and do things that make it better. And so I hope that people see, I may not have made every choice that you liked. I'll fully own that there'll be choices where people will be like, well, you voted this way and I don't like that. And I, like I said, when I'm given the information, I have to make the choice I felt was best for the city. And it's a tough go, but I'm more than willing to make the tough decisions. I'm more than willing to raise my hand on a vote and put my name out there because it is open. And I hope people see that. I hope they see that I'm approachable. You can email me. You can stop me at the supermarket. You can stop me wherever you want and just say, hey, can you tell me a little bit more about this situation? And like I said, may not be the best time at the supermarket, but I'll say, I'll get back to you. Everybody who's emailed me with a question or a concern, I've always emailed them back. I've always brought their concerns. It doesn't matter if it's a concern I have. That's not my point. If you're concerned, I'll bring it up. It'll get hopefully discussed and we'll move on. Like I said, everybody has a concern and I'll bring it up. And like you said earlier, it may not get done in year 1 or year 2 or year 3. It might get done at the end of year 4, or it might have to move over to another thing. But I think, again, honesty, integrity. I tell people, you may not want to hear it, but here's the truth. Here's why we're doing it. Here's the rationale. And, hopefully people go away after talking with me feeling, you know what, I may not agree, or maybe they do agree, but at least they have an understanding of, hey, at least he'll listen. He'll take my concern, and I can appreciate that.
Ryan, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for doing this, but I also want to ask you one last question, because on this show, I've always said, if you haven't learned from doing this about 5 years now, that if I say it's my last question, there's going to be 2 new questions that pop up right away. But how can people reach out to you? Because you say you let people know via email, but how can people reach out? Because we have chatted for the last 55 minutes, and I guarantee you there's going to be at least one person that says, he didn't ask about this question, and this is the most important issue for me. How can people reach out and say, Ryan, what's your stance on this issue, so that way I can make my decision a little bit easier? How can they do that?
Right. Well, my campaign email is different from my councillor email. So send it to my campaign email. It's all one word. It's going to be Bailey, Bailey, the number 4, Cold Lake, COLDLAKE @gmail.com. And I'll get back to you. So again, Bailey 4, the number 4, Cold Lake @gmail.com. So please, anything about campaigns, please send it to that one. But if you have a concern about something like your utility bill or something right now, you can get a hold of me on my council one as well. So that's the other tough thing about running for re-election is separating your silos out.
For those who want to reach out and did not write that down quickly enough, it will be in the show notes, so you can reach out via email in the show notes. It will be linked there. Ryan, a pleasure to sit down with you. Good luck over the next 40 some odd days between now and election day. We wish you all the best, and hopefully when I'm up in Cold Lake this weekend, we can grab a coffee and say hi to each other in person before I head back out and head out to La Loche, Saskatchewan. So thank you so much.
All right. I look forward to that. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you so much for tuning in for another episode of Alberta Municipal Votes 2025 here on Municipal Affairs. Now, we want to thank everyone for tuning in and hope you gained some valuable insights into the world of municipal politics in this all-important Alberta municipal election. For those who haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast platforms or by visiting us online at crossbordernetwork.ca. Quick editorial note, for those who are wishing to be featured on this show, reach out to us directly via social media or head over to the Cross Border Network website at crossbordernetwork.ca and click the Join the Show link there. There you'll be able to fill out the information, and one of our team members will get back to you in a very short period of time, and we would love to have you on the show to talk about why you are running in this all-important municipal election. We want to thank everyone for tuning in for another great episode, and as always, stay informed, stay engaged, and we will be back with a brand new episode of Alberta Municipal Votes 2025 shortly. Till then, everyone.